mistakes are invited and almost celebrated when we're focused on our body of work. Well, that quote, I think that's what I heard, but I was driving back from Thousand Oaks this week with I got a chance to be able to golf with my brother. And I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast with Robert Rodriguez, and he was talking about the body of work. And if we look at the body of work that we're doing as opposed to circumstance, we'll have the tendency to give ourselves a lot more grace and invite mistakes, invite challenges, invite all these things, because he said in the ashes of the worst mistakes that you could ever make are the keys to the next opportunity. And so as I was looking at this, imagine the freedom that we would have. Imagine the freedom that we could unlock in ourselves and the creativity that will come with that freedom if we will start to look at our body of work as opposed to just our circumstances. Well, in Proverbs 29, it encourages us to consider Jesus's body of work. And he calls us to be present, although to stay focused on ours. So how can we stay focused on the present moment, but have thought of the future, which is our body of work? So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
I was taken back by this concept of looking at our body of work, especially when I talked to Mr. Mike Ganino. I was talking to him the other day on the podcast, and if you didn't get a chance to be able to listen to him, you need to check that out. But as he was talking, he was talking about workshopping things. And workshopping things, meaning that you have an idea, you go workshop it, you test it out. Maybe it's a joke. He was talking about public speaking, but you could use it for anything, a concept in business, and try it out. And when you try it out, if it works, write it down, systemize it. If it sucks, write it down and make sure you don't do it again, because then it'll become a part of your processes and procedures, because those are nothing more than a list of your screw-ups. And if you give people freedom to be able to do that inside of your organization, inside of a relationship, then you give them the freedom to be able to innovate. When they innovate, they get creative. And when you're creative, the only thing that's left is then to adapt immediately and look at it and say, like, I workshopped this joke. Did it hit? Oh, well, it didn't hit, but the audience was off. Workshop it, workshop it, workshop it. And I got a chance to be able to do that this morning because we were talking about the body of work in our men's group. And if you haven't got a chance to come and be a part of our men's group, it's at 7:30 to 8:30 here in Carlsbad, California. Reach out to me, send me a message. I'll send you the address. It's complimentary to come. And I tell you, there's magic that happens. We go through the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. It's the 29th today. And so we're going through Proverbs 29. In Inchstones, if this is the first time that you're tuning in, what we do is we take this 3,000-year-old wisdom and see how it can apply today. So it not from a religious standpoint, not from a ritual standpoint, but from a relationship standpoint. And how can we take this wisdom that literally is there and has been there and been tried, proven, and tested, and how can we apply it in our lives today? And so that's what we call Inchstones, little tiny things that we can celebrate and pile up, and they become the milestones in our lives. And, people always told me you have to have these big, hairy, audacious goals, although sometimes I'd get overwhelmed. But when I could look at the small little things, each one of them, I could celebrate them. And I can realize, like Robert Rodriguez was talking about on the Joe Rogan podcast, I could realize that those little Inchstones are all a part of my body of work, and I focus on the body of work, then I'm not so concerned of making a mistake, or I'm not fearful of making that mistake, and I could just workshop it. So I would say to workshop things as much as possible. Well, I heard that concept this weekend of the body of work. And then I started to ask myself, like, okay, how can we look at this in a practical sense? Well, we can apply it to business. Well, imagine if you have something new that you want to try out, but sometimes we become paralyzed by by analyzing. So we analyze so many things. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do that? And then we do nothing. Why not just try something and workshop it, see if it works, and then adjust it? And that's probably one of the best things that we did when we owned salons all over the country is we would try stuff out. We would test it. I remember we tested hot chocolate, and we brought in hot chocolate, and it didn't cost us that much. We were already spending on coffee and tea and whatever it was. And we tried hot chocolate just during the holiday season, and it went nuts. Everyone was talking about the hot chocolate. Didn't cost us much as a company, but it got people very excited about it. But it was just an idea. It was just to have an idea, then we add action to it, and then we see what the results are, and then we just workshop it. We see how we can make it better. And if you give yourself the permission and the grace to be able to do that, it can work out incredible. And in Proverbs 29, it encourages us to consider Jesus's body of work, which was 33 years, but really his ministry was only 30 or 3. It was only 3 years out of his life, but it took the body of work the 30 years to be able to set the foundation for the 3 years of powerful work that he was going to do. So I want you to give yourself some grace in that. And, through Proverbs 29, it calls us to be present, which sounds so crazy, to be present and, love on the moment, but also have thought of the future. But the way that we can do that is by seeking wisdom and spending time with God, where he'll have us. So, in verse 1, it talked about inviting correction, and it invited us to screw up, write it down, and keep it moving. If we can do that in what it is that we do, whether it be writing a book. So we just got done with Inchstones workbook, or we could call it a playbook. The corresponding proverb, corresponding day. It's got 3 months of the journaling inside of it. And watch this: invite correction, meaning that you put wise counsel around you. And then you screw up, you try something and screw up. And I did it took me a year and a half to be able to get the book out. A year of which I was trying to do it myself. I was making stupid mistakes. I had someone design it. It didn't work out on Amazon. And then I had to scrap that whole idea and then start in on a new one. But what I did is I learned what not to do. So that way, when a friend comes and says, hey, I want to, like my buddy, Coach Gary is talking about, he's just about to write his book. I need to write a book. My buddy, Craig, I need to write a book. Well, now I have the formula, not because I'm a genius, is because I just screwed up and messed it up. And now I know how to be able to produce them. Same thing with my buddy, Tim Semmelroth. He reached out and he was talking about his podcast. Well, over the last 5 years, a lot of things were gate kept, and I didn't know how to produce the podcast. No one would tell me. And so I figured it out myself. And then we figured out how to be the quickest turnaround in the history, not the history, but the quickest turnaround in the industry, meaning that from the time that I'm shooting this, it'll be live on YouTube, and then it'll be on Apple, Spotify, and all other podcast channels. It'll be clipped up and be on social within a couple of hours. So these kind of things are workflow, but because I had to make a lot of mistakes, now I know how to do it. It's not, again, because I'm smart with it. It's because I've been through the process and I can show people I screwed up on this. Let's streamline it and be able to go here. And over the next couple of years, I'm sure that I'll streamline it even more. So in verse 1, screw up, write it down, and keep it moving. Make sure that you just keep moving ahead and you just keep taking and cutting away the fat. Any business that we've grown, when we grew the salon businesses, when I first stepped out and I did my own brand, I had worked with what I think arguably the greatest in the history of the beauty industry, which was Robert Cromeans. And when I worked with him and I went off and did my own, I wanted to honor the education that I had. So I wanted to take what he had taught me. I wanted to cut away the fat, find where we could be more efficient, and then create the most efficient product, which we did in the professional beauty industry. And so be able to do that, we've got to give yourself the grace to invite correction, screw up, write it down, and keep it moving. So in verse 2, joy comes when right is done. And what is right? You know what right is if you spend time with someone who has wisdom. And the beginning of all wisdom is spending time with God. So if you spend time with God, he'll let you know what's right at that particular time. Now, some people will say, well, what's right? Like always, or, what will apply all the time across the board. I could tell you this. If when I first started my business in 2006 and we started our first location, what was right at that time wasn't right in 2007. So we had to adjust. We had to adjust. We didn't have to make blow everything up, but we had to shift slightly. And this is where entrepreneurs have challenges, is because a lot of times when we run into challenges or we run into something, we think, oh man, I got to scrap it all and then I need to start anew. No, we just need to make slight shifts. And if we could stay ahead of the curve by inviting correction into our life, we can do that. And that way we can workshop it as much as possible and literally try it, check it out. If it works, write it down, make a system out of it. If it doesn't, write it down and let it become the next rules and regulations that people aren't supposed to do, but make sure that you communicate that to your crew. So joy is done when right is done. Let's see. Let me see where that one's at. Is joy comes when right is done, and joy is the art of falling in love with your current circumstances and just allowing magic to happen. In verse 3, 8, and 9, loving wisdom has no downside. That's pretty much self-explanatory. Sit on that, chewing it on it for a bit. And when you love wisdom, which is the right use of knowledge, and the only place that you could get that is from the fear of God. And the fear of God only comes from spending time with him. Every person on earth, I don't care who you are, at some point, you're going to call out to his name, and he wants to spend time with you. That's it. He doesn't want to spend time with you through the rituals that you do or the religion that you have. He just wants to spend time with you. And you'll see his love and his grace, and he'll fill you up that way. And there's no downside to it at all. In verse 4, 6, 7, and 14, doing right creates a firm foundation. And if you see this, I think in any business or in any relationship, doing right, doing the right thing will build a firm foundation that you could build every single thing else on. And if you take a second, you take a breath and you step back and say, let me consider my body of work as opposed to the circumstance. Let me think of my body of work. And in my body of work, how do I want to be portrayed? How do I want to be looked at? What is the foundation that I'm laying? And doing right always creates that firm foundation. So think and take consideration of your body of work. Be present, but also take thought of the future. In verse 5, it talks about speaking life. And honestly, every one of you, I would challenge you on this. Do this. Try this today. Send out a text to somebody, call them, send them an email, tell them say their name, and then say something that they did that was absolutely inspiring, but it has to be specific for someone to feel it. It really changes cultures. It changes rooms. I tell you, if your boss called you today and said to you, hey, last Thursday, when you delivered that paper to me, I was really in need and it really made my day. Or they saw something that you didn't think that they saw, that changes cultures. And it doesn't cost anything for an organization to be able to do that. And I promise you, most of the things that are the challenges in organizations or in companies or even in relationships, it comes down, my pops taught me this, it comes down, 99% of it is communication. And when we communicate what inspires us to the people who inspired us, and we do it publicly too, it changes things, I tell you. In verse 10 and 27, optimism will come when you're doing right. Don't let it rob your joy. So opposition is always going to come, and it's going to come in super hot, especially when you're doing the right thing. So if you've got a lot of opposition, a lot of times it means that you're doing the right thing. Now, if you didn't seek wisdom before you started, that's where you could get into challenges. We were talking about this in our men's group, and we were saying that, if you start with your heart, which most people don't, if you start with your heart, which is your belief system, then you move to your mind, which is your intentions, and then you move to your actions, and you align all those things, there's very little power that can ever stand against that, right? When you're in alignment with your heart, your mind, and your skills or your actions. But a lot of times what happens is we just go to the mind. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Well, what I'm feeling is X. Well, we're only going to the mind. We're not going to what we actually believe about it. So what we believe and what we intend to do is out of line. And then our actions are maybe in line with our mind, but they're not in line with our heart. Align all of them. That's what creates that irresistible vibe that we talk about all the time. And the vibe is not the energy that you bring into the room. It's simply the way that people feel when you leave, right? So in verse 11, 20, and 22 is stay calm and consider your body of work. This was a thing that Robert Rodriguez was talking about, one of the most prolific filmmakers of our time, and he did it independently. He made his first movie for $7,000, and he talks about it on the podcast with Joe Rogan. This guy is unbelievable, but what he wanted to do is he lit it, he filmed it, he edited it, he did all those things. He was even talking about the way in which in El Mariachi, when he filmed it, he took the audio, and when the audio wasn't syncing, what he would do, as opposed to reshooting it, he would just cut it to another scene where the person would be talking, but you wouldn't see their mouth, and then he would cut back to them when the audio was on. This was a way and a creativity that came from a desperation because he didn't have the money to be able to film it twice. So what kind of things can happen when you have that scrap inside of you and you start to say, I'll workshop this, I'll try it out. I'm going to think about it as my body of work, not as this specific circumstance has to be perfect today. And it'll free you up. In verse 12, listen to wisdom, which is the right use of knowledge. Verse 13, he knows. God sees everything that you're doing, and you're never going to be able to get away from him. And at some point, honestly, like, you're going to want to have that relationship with him. So why not just start now? Like, spend time with him. He'll direct you in those things. In verse 15 through 17, 15 and 17 is invite discipline. Inviting discipline into your life is probably one of the most uncomfortable things in the world, but it's a lot more comfortable than somebody else jumping down your throat. And that's what I would very much encourage you. You know, I learned this through business and through my own fault, is because I would have a lot of conversations with my pop. Well, he would correct me in certain areas when I was off, and he always directed me back to build the people, allow the people to build the business. And this was a core principle that constantly happened. And when I would get off and I would get so focused on the processes and procedures, I would love the processes and procedures and say to my pop, like, no, this is the way that people should be doing it. Look at the results. We're going to get the results. They just need to understand. He would flip it back. Son, you're in love with the systems. You're in love with the procedures, and you're managing the people. Flip it around. Manage the systems. Put them in place, manage the systems, but always love the people. And when you love the people, they grow. And when they grow the business. So in verse 16, the right road always works out. And it really does. This is a quote from my wife. I don't think she said it exactly that way. But from my wife, the right road always works out. It never doesn't. It's just sometimes it takes time. But when we are thinking of our body of work as opposed to the circumstance, that's when things really start to change up, right? In verse 18, rules without relationship cause rebellion. If you have any rules or procedures in your company, in your relationships and your friendships, if you have any rules or like, here's my boundaries, but you haven't explained and you haven't communicated them to the other parties, that's when things have the tendency to go awry, or when rebellion happens because a person says, why are you trying to tell me what to do? Well, this is the reason why I went through this, and this is the reason why. When people understand the story and it's communicated, they don't have a problem with the procedures that are in place. And we did this in building, building our businesses when we did. These are things that need to be communicated as you go. In verse 19, people hear where they are at. And that's the only thing that people will ever hear, is just where they're at. They're never going to hear like the profound words that you say. They won't see what you do. They'll only hear where they're at. And that comes from Kelly Cardenas, probably one of the wisest women. And I'm proud of you, baby. I'm proud of who you are and what you're doing. You are unbelievably incredible. So in verse 21 is mistakes shouldn't be avoided. This is a hard thing for a dad, and especially in this time right now where, coaching or anything like that, we want to make it easier for our kids, but literally let them make mistakes. Give them the freedom to make mistakes as long as they're willing to write them down and systemize them and say, like, I don't want to do that again, and learn from it, right? But mistakes will be invited when we're looking at our body of work as opposed to our scenario right now. In verse 23, You aren't that smart, so stay humble. This was a quote from Robert Rodriguez on the Joe Rogan podcast. And he said, like, I'm not that smart. Like, I'm not that smart. Like, but I look at my body of work and I allow myself to make mistakes. And when that happens, I feel free. When I feel free, I'm creative. And when I'm creative, the greatest things happen. But for that to happen, I've got to stay focused on my body of work. So always remember, you aren't that smart. And so stay humble. And then you'll be open to be able to learn in those situations. In verse 14 is hanging with silly people creates silliness. And finally, in verse 25 and 26, as we end up, is stay focused on God's plan. And this is probably one of the hardest things because, especially with today, we'll see social or we'll see media anywhere and we'll compare ourselves to other things. But it's amazing every single time that, that there's a stress point or anything like that. I look at it and it always goes back to God just saying, like, work your land, work your land, work your land, work your land. I designed you for this moment, for this purpose. And I want to let every one of you guys know that you were designed for exactly where you're at. And if you needed to be someplace else, God would have you in that place. And it as simple as that sounds, my pops used to say it to me all the time, and it was frustrating, but it's where it's at. And it's amazing too for me because as I go through this study of the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day, and if you haven't got the workbook, it's called Inchstones. It's on Amazon. It's on the link in the bio. If you haven't got that yet, check it out. It's a 3-month journal. It'll take you through the corresponding proverb, corresponding day, and you'll be able to write down what hit your heart, what it made you think about, and what action you can add to it today. And what you'll see is first you'll read the word, and then the word will start to read you, and then the word will come alive. And then it'll be not out of ritual or religion, but it will just be in a sense of this is a relationship that I want to have with wisdom. And when that starts to happen, you'll see magic start to happen within your life. And like I said, that's available. Click the link in the bio. You can do that. You can also get our book or my book. It's called The Vibe. And I talked to a guy the other day and he said, The Vibe is must-read material for every single entrepreneur. He said it should be a prerequisite. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you should have to read this book. And that came from Lance Kaufman, and I want to thank you so much for that. But I think the reason why is because I didn't write it from theory. I wrote it from us building a company and building a culture, and then looking back and saying, how did we do it? And we wrote it down. So we didn't do it from theory. We did it from experience. And these were things that actually happened within our life and how we were able to build with no marketing budget, with no market share, going into cities that we had no idea about, and building $1 million locations out of 1,000 square foot places with 19 to 24-year-olds. But it was because we built the people, and then the people built the business. And that's why. And so, as we finish up again, is just stay focused on God's plan. And as I was listening to Robert Rodriguez on Joe Rogan's podcast, it's amazing because God gave me that nudge this morning, and he was saying, that those words inspired you, and that person inspired you, and his story inspired you, Robert Rodriguez. And I'll have him on the podcast. I'm going to have him on at some point. I've reached out to him already, and but he said those principles that he talked about are rooted and grounded in 3,000-year-old wisdom that I had sitting in Proverbs in 29, and I'm going to show you. And so he just keeps coming alive. If you don't know already, on May 8th, speech from Arrested Development, the song Tennessee, and People Every Day, and Mr. Wendell, the lead singer, is going to be on here, the founder of the group. He's going to be on the Vibe, which is going to be amazing. And I want to encourage you in this as we finish. I saw a clip of him on Instagram, and I've always loved the music. It's always spoke to my soul, and it was a different type of hip hop, and I just always loved it. It was very positive, and I saw the clip on Instagram, and I instantly reached out to him, and I said, hey, I just wanted to let you know that your music has spoke to my soul. Our podcast is ranked in the top 1% globally, and it would be an absolute honor to have you on the show. Within 12 hours, he reached back out and said, yes, that sounds great. Here's my agent. And so what I want to encourage you is if you're willing to step out and just try, workshop it, like try it. Magic can happen, but no magic can happen if you don't try. And you won't be able to try if you're not creative. If you won't be creative if you're not free. And you won't be free if you are constantly looking at trying to be perfect as opposed to looking at your body of work. See, God's plans are above our plans, and when we take into consideration our body of work, we will be free to make mistakes, write them down, and then keep it moving. I want to thank you all for hopping on here with Inchstones. It is my absolute pleasure and honor. May 8th, make sure that you're here. But I tell you, you never know who shows up on the show. We have a couple different shows. The Inchstones, which is this one, take me on your walk, and we can talk about wisdom. Well, I got You Have to Meet My Friends, where I go live and call my friends randomly, and then I get to interview some of the most iconic people in the world. I want to thank you again for tuning in. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.